this is a perfect representation, I think, of what the women's game has become, and that is, to me, an objectively better product than the men's game. As great as March Madness is, can't wait to watch the Final Four. Zach Edey versus DJ Burns. Can UConn be dethroned by Alabama? Nate Oates is a great coach. There's plenty of great storylines, way more good storylines in this year's Final Four than last year's, which was a sleeper. But by and large, not great shooters. The best players who go to the NBA don't come from college. They come from the G League or they come from overseas. By and large now, certainly more so overseas. Not a ton of great college players anymore in large part because of the one and done. Well, the women's game, they say 3-4 years. They get to develop. They get, obviously, a really good coach, a Bluter in Iowa, Kim Mulkey at LSU. You think about Dawn Staley at South Carolina. You can think about Gina Auriemma at UConn. A lot of different coaches who have made tremendous impacts on these young women who have been able to have successful careers in the WNBA. By the way, Bryce's best 10 WNBA players in about 20 to 25 minutes. But the women's game has good ball handling, good ball movement, defense. Angel Reese was awesome. More on Angel Reese in about 10 minutes. Again, great rim protection. And more than anything, and this is what basketball is now. And the women's game seems to have adjusted. Caitlin Clark certainly is spearheading this. They seem to adjust into, man, we want to see shooters. I mean, how many times have you heard me say when I talk about the NBA that the only guy that can get away with being a superstar and not being able to knock down a consistent jumper is Giannis? Well, Giannis is the best player within 5 feet of the basket since Shaq, so not everybody else can do that. Embiid can shoot. Jokic can shoot. Anthony Davis, it's one of the reasons I don't think he's a superstar, because he doesn't give it to you consistently offensively as great as he is on the defensive end, because Anthony Davis is not a consistent good shooter. LeBron is. Obviously, Steph is. Luka tends to be a, obviously a consistent shooter as far as we're concerned. So that's kind of what the women's game has become. And Caitlin Clark has spearheaded that. And I think what is so great about Caitlin Clark is that she has joined a very, very exclusive pantheon of athletes who, regardless of what sport they play, they will get you to your TV. It should be noted that LSU Iowa was the most watched women's college basketball game of all time, surpassing last year's game, which last year's game was the most watched women's game on ESPN. This one was the most watched women's game ever, breaking a record in the early 80s. I believe Cheryl Miller I think if Cheryl Miller played in that game for USC. Caitlin Clark gets you to a TV. Tiger Woods got you to a TV. Muhammad Ali got you to a TV. LeBron James gets you to a TV. Michael Jordan gets you to a TV. You're like, Bryson, why aren't you mentioning Brady or Mahomes? Because the NFL is the king of television. Like, would they rather have great all-time quarterback play like Brady, Manning, Mahomes? Of course. But the NFL, it's 17 games. It's a shorter season. There's more of a sense of urgency. It's the most bet-on sport, the most watched sport. Like football, professional football, the NFL will never be surpassed by any sport. Don't care who you are. Caitlin Clark is on a short. Serena Williams, by the way, is in this category as well. A short list of athletes who, regardless of the sport they play, and regardless of how, on average, how much their sport is watched, she gets you to a TV. For the record, I think Paige Beckers and Juju Watkins, who we saw after LSU Iowa, will as well. Angel Reese does. Johnson, the guard for LSU, she gets you to a television. But Caitlin Clark gets you to a television not just because she's so exciting, but because, like those athletes I mentioned, Ali, Tiger, we can throw in Brady, we can throw in Mahomes, Serena. When the lights are the brightest, that's when she plays the best. We can show you Caitlin Clark's numbers beyond the Sweet 16 of the tournament. Okay, she's played 4 games. It's about to be 5 this Friday. 4 games beyond the Sweet 16 in March Madness, and here are her numbers. They are insane. See, she averages 38 points a game, 10 assists, 6 rebounds, 1.1 steals. But again, averages 38 points a game on 47% from the field, 47.5% from the field, basically 43% from three-point range, 87% from the line, and her team is 3-1. And you see a couple of notes there. She had the first 30-point triple-double in the history of March Madness, men's or women's, did that against Louisville a year ago in the Elite Eight with a 41-point triple-double, which is crazy. And think about this, folks. South Carolina, maybe they lose on Friday, maybe they don't. My guess is they don't. it will have been 760 plus days since they've lost 2 basketball games in that stretch. Their one loss, you guessed it, Caitlin Clark handed it to him with a 41-point performance. And in this game, she dropped 41 points. That seems to be our favorite number in the Elite Eight and beyond. When the lights get brightest, that's when she plays her best. The shots that I know sometimes we sound like we are like a broken record or overstating, maybe, as weird as that sounds, overstating how great something that a person does is. But there aren't, outside of Steph Curry and Damian Lillard, I would not want men or women, a single player, to take the shots that Caitlin Clark takes. Like if Klay Thompson, one of the greatest shooters ever, if Kyle Korver, think about some of the all-time great three-point shooters, Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, if those guys took those shots, you're like, what are you doing? Steph and Dame are the only guys I'm like, yeah, they can make that. I've seen them make it a million times. Steph was kind of the guy to originate it. And Caitlin Clark does it routinely. She shot 9 for 20 from three-point range, which, given the shots that she takes, I saw a stat, or they read a stat. Ryan Rucco, who called the game, did a tremendous job. Ryan Rucco, Rebecca Lobo, who do a great job on ESPN calling the women's tournament. Ryan Rucco threw out a stat, and he kind of did it, at least I thought, that's how I interpreted it, kind of flippantly. And I heard that, I'm like, that's crazy. The three-point line is 22 feet. Caitlin Clark's average three-point shot is from 26 feet out. 4 feet beyond the three-point line. Her average shot, 4 feet beyond the three-point line. Not to mention, and this matters because Tiger had it, Ali had it, Serena had it, Brady, Mahomes, Jordan, LeBron. This matters. She's got the moxie. She's got the swagger. She's got the attitude of somebody who knows the stage that she's on and what she's capable of doing in showing out on said stage. That's what she does. We saw it last year in the tournament against Louisville, against South Carolina, seeing this year in the tournament, and this year really all season long throughout her career at Iowa. She lives for the big moment. When the lights get the brightest, that is when she plays her best, and that's all we want to see from our most elite athletes. 12.5 million people watched this basketball game. That is a higher rating than the entire World Series last year. It is a higher rating than 4 of the 5 NBA Finals games between the Nuggets and the Heat, and is higher rated. Think about this. This one to me was the most surprising. Michigan and Ohio State, the game in college football, was the only college football regular season game that got a higher rating than LSU Iowa. I mean, think about the history and tradition. College football is more watched than any other college sport. And every single game in terms of ratings lost to LSU Iowa but one. That's the Caitlin Clark effect. That's what she's done for women's college basketball. And that, to me, and this is a sidebar that we'll get to in years to come, and then I'll transition to LSU and Angel Reese for carving up the context. I think there's a lot of pressure on the WNBA right now. I saw this. I was actually listening to Nick Wright's podcast, and his son, who's his co-host, threw out a stat that he saw on USA Today. That Caitlin Clark, based on what the number 1 pick in the draft last year, Leah Boston from South Carolina, who was drafted by the Indiana Fever, who this year had the number 1 pick, they're going to take Caitlin Clark. Aaliyah Boston has a contract. Listen, for the rest of us, that's a lot of money, but for professional athletes, this is nothing. That on average pays her a little more than $200,000 because of obviously the lack of eyeballs to the WNBA compared to the NBA and compared to other leagues. If the WNBA cannot market Caitlin Clark, if they cannot, in the next few years, market Juju and Paige and Angel Reese, if they can't market these players, you may have to disband the league. and create a new one. For the record, maybe there'll be another league. Ice Cube obviously recruited Caitlin Clark to I forget what Ice Cube's league is called. Not the Big East, the Big Three, basketball league, which is like a 3-on-3 basketball league. And he offered Caitlin Clark $5 million to compete in it. Remember the NBA? Well, I don't remember this because I wasn't around, but the NBA was at its most irrelevant in the 1970s. So what happened? The ABA, Dr. J, won championships, won MVPs. I would argue, a very strong argument can be made that the best basketball in the 1970s wasn't played in the NBA. It was played in the ABA. And then you had two massive marketable stars, Magic Johnson for the Lakers out of Michigan State, Larry Bird for the Boston Celtics out of Indiana State, who saved the NBA and have obviously them coming in and all those finals matchups in the 80s helped the league get to where it is today in terms of its popularity and its revenue. I don't know if Caitlin will have that sort of impact in the WNBA. I hope so. I think it'd be awesome. But if the WNBA can't market Caitlin Clark, this is a gift for this league. Kathy Engelbert, I think, has done a really good job as a commissioner of the league, much better than the previous commissioner. But there's pressure on the WNBA to make sure that that this particular player is everywhere. Major League Baseball, which obviously a far more established product, they've been around for over a century and a half, but Major League Baseball is horrendously bad at marketing. Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, Aaron Judge, they're terrible at it. If the WNBA employs that strategy, which I don't think they will, but if they do, it could really hurt the league and maybe be the end of the league. I pray to God that's not the case, because I think a good WNBA is great for basketball as a whole. So really, really interesting sort of subplot there. But in general, this is a superstar. This is somebody who gets people to their TVs. I mean, it was a really, really cool thing to see. When you go on, I was live tweeting the whole game. And when you go on there and you see, again, my entire feed is just nothing but tweets. LSU, Iowa. Oh my gosh, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and Kim Mulkey, and all these particular storylines and characters in this particular story were on full display at their best. What a win for women's college basketball. No question about it. By the way, feel free to chime in the comment section. Again, apologies for starting the show a little later than expected. Again, there were some technical difficulties with some video we were trying to be able to play on the show. We've got it. Show's running perfectly smoothly. But man, what a performance by Caitlin Clark. I mean, again, averages 38 points on 47, 43, 87 shooting splits after the Sweet 16, given the shots that she takes from deep in three-point range. It's unbelievable. There's no question. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.